all that isn't going to make it to the rundown today because we got to get into some football. Breaking news right before I started recording, the Jets have fired their head coach, Robert Saleh. I want to say his record was 20-36 as the Jets head coach after I don't want to call it a disappointing loss because I don't really think that anyone thought they were going to beat Minnesota. Nobody really thinks that they're a great team. They're probably right in the cuff of average, 7 to 9 wins tops, 9 on the high end, but they're probably still a little too talented to win less than 7. They're 2-3 right now. I was going to start this by talking about the game itself. As the Vikings won 23-17, the Jets did have a chance. They had the ball down 6, trying to drive to win. Aaron Rodgers threw an interception to Stephon Gilmore, former Patriot, former Colt, former Cowboy, to end it as he was throwing to Mike Williams. They probably weren't on the same page about what they need to do on that route. And so it kind of just looks like a terrible, bad pass. And you kind of hate for a game to end that way if you're on offense or if you're a fan of the Jets, because it just doesn't even really feel like there was a chance, So, the Vikings on their end, I don't think they play particularly well either from the offensive standpoint. They always play well defensively, but they got out hot. I think they started with I don't know if they started with a field goal or a touchdown, but I know that they got up 17-0. There was a pick 6. Sam Darnold threw a bad pick in there. Aaron Rodgers was frustrated, so he threw a pick 6, then came back, threw another pick right after, trying to kind of force a ball in something. And, he prides himself on not turning the ball over. So him throwing 2 picks and then the force the pick at the end, which made it a total of 3, obviously it frustrated him, and you can kind of see it on his face through the game. But instead of getting so much in the fact that Aaron Rodgers looks old, because he looks old, I'm going to go more into just the reason why the Jets, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this just because I've got other stuff that I do want to touch, but the Jets are in a very, very weird situation where, prior to last season, like the offseason, they had signed Aaron Rodgers. There's all this hope. You knew what you had in Breece Hall. You knew what you had in Garrett Wilson. You knew what you had in your defense. And it was just like, oh, my God, the Jets. Aaron Rodgers gets hurt 4 plays in. And the season kind of goes to, down the toilet. But for it, and I want to make sure that I'm being fair and I'm being straight and direct and clear. Do I think that Robert Saleh was the right coach? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not a coach expert. I can't go look at a coach and say, oh, he doesn't need to coach. I don't watch enough Jets football, especially in big moments, big time games, to know his tendencies in certain situations. Does he have good game management, clock management? Does he make the right decisions on 4th downs, when to go for it, when to kick field goal? Like, I don't watch enough Jets to know that, to cast a certain judgment. I do, however, I can just see a team that is, I don't even want to say not very well coached, because again, like I said, I can't judge it. I don't know what their penalty numbers look like, but obviously something's weird. And this is where you get a situation where a poorly run organization is what costs a head coach's job, more so than the coach and the job he's doing himself. The New York Jets have been a desperate franchise for as long as I can remember. They've been the laughing stock of the NFL, the Jets and the Browns and the Lions. And the Lions have, as you've seen, turned it around completely. They brought in Dan Campbell, who he might not make the best decisions from a game management standpoint, from a 4th down standpoint, but he's a culture builder. And when you're a culture builder, you change the mindset of people in the organization who just kind of expect to lose. And when you turn expecting to lose into hoping to win, and then you turn hoping to win into expecting to win, then you have what the Lions are now. But the Jets, the Jets have been a desperate franchise. And what happens is, they say when you go to Vegas, nobody ever wins in Vegas who needs to win. If you go to Vegas because you got $100 to your name, but somehow you need $3,000 so that you can pay your mortgage and pay your light bill, you're not going to win. Nobody wins in Vegas when they need to win, right? Desperate people make desperate choices. And desperate choices are never good choices. So the Jets had Sam Darnold. They didn't like it. It wasn't working. Got him out of there. They had like Mike White. They tried it out there for a little bit, whatever. Said, okay, let's draft the kid Zach Wilson at number 2 out of desperation. I don't know. He was short. He's always been short. Yeah, he had some arm talent, but he was out of BYU. He shot up the draft boards the offseason prior to the draft. It's almost like, oh, this is the sexy pick here. Let's draft Zach Wilson. It didn't work. They now, one thing Robert Saleh has always been able to do is he's good on his side of the ball. He's good on the defensive side of the ball. He was DC defense coordinator with the Niners before getting the job. So he's always good on his side of the ball, and the Jets have been good defensively. Really good defensively. But you get desperate. You say, oh, my God, we had such a defense. We lost so many games by a close margin if we just had a quarterback. And so then you get desperate and you say, oh, I'm looking over there. I see a quarterback who won 2 back-to-back MVPs. Then he had a year they won like 8 games. But he wants out of Green Bay. Let's go get Aaron Rodgers, who clearly doesn't look like the same Aaron Rodgers. He's clearly regressing, but we're desperate. To get Aaron Rodgers, what do we have to do? We have to get Nat Hackett, who just had the disaster of a head coaching job in Denver, but we're desperate. Oh, now we got to bring in Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard because these are Aaron Rodgers' guys. And even though Alan Lazard maybe, but Randall Cobb's not playing on any other roster in this league, but we're desperate. Now, Randall Cobb's not even on the team anymore, but we're desperate because Aaron Rodgers tears his Achilles. He misses the whole year, and we basically just have another year like the previous year where we play good defense. We literally have an inept offense, and people's jobs are on the line trying to make this thing work. So what do they do this year? Okay, so we're going to go find older veteran offensive linemen. Get Tyron Smith from the Cowboys, Maury Moses, I believe is Maury Moses from the Ravens. So their offensive line is now veteran, but their offensive line is full of veteran offensive linemen who also tend to get hurt. Tyron Smith hasn't played a full season in however many years. And the only reason I know that specifically about him is because I'm a Cowboys fan, but that's how it was. But they said, look, we got to adjust the offensive line. We got to address it. Let's address it. Cool. You're going to bring in Mike Williams. You got to bring in another threat, someone who's hopefully a deep threat to open up the offense. Cool. I'm not going to say those are desperate moves. And I'm really not even going to say that drafting Zach Wilson at 2 was a desperation move. But now you lose to the Vikings. You're 2-2. You were 2-2. You lose to the Vikings. Now you're 2-3. Right before Monday Night Football, which I was under the impression that after you play in London, you have a bye week. But I guess if you play Sunday morning and then you don't play until Monday night, I guess it's still, you have plenty of time in between. And you fire your head coach because things feel a little bit weird. Right? Saleh said, we're having issues with the snap count. Maybe we should adjust the snap count because we're getting a lot of false starts. And Aaron Rodgers comes and says, well, we haven't had a problem before. So it's clearly not the cadence. Like your obviously that thing happened that night where like Saleh went to hug Rodgers. Rodgers pushed him off. Hell said something, and people were trying to figure out what it was. And Rodgers said something about 2-score lead. It just looks weird. And when it looks weird to us outside, it is probably even weirder inside the building, right? We knew something looked weird about the Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen situation. Next thing you know, Diggs is gone. When things just look weird, usually it's because they are. we don't really see the extreme. When you see a player that's upset or looks disgruntled, it's probably 5 times more extreme inside the actual building, not just what we get on TV. So, yeah, things are a little bit weird, but you fire Robert Saleh, not during the bye week where people can kind of be gone for a little bit and then come back into the building and everything is fresh. You fire him Tuesday morning when you have a game Monday night. Interim head coach going to be defensive coordinator. So, but what problem did you solve? That again, this is where it almost feels like we are making this move just because we need to make a move out of desperation. That's what this looks like to me. What difference does firing Robert Saleh now and firing him at the end of the season make? Other than, well, what we don't want to do is get lucky and get hot and go on a run, and now we are forced to either fire a coach who made the playoffs or keep him because he made the playoffs. And I understand that to an extent. I remember as a Cowboys fan, I remember when Jason Garrett was in the last year of his contract and we were sick of him. But then, of course, that's the year that the Cowboys, I think it was Dak rookie year and Zeke's rookie year, we ended up going like 13-3 or something like that. So then it was like, oh, he just won coach of the year. Got to bring him back, even though you were already done with him. And that's kind of my mindset. If you were already done with him, if you knew today you were done with him, firing him, if you're trying to salvage the season, you can't go bring in a new coach. You're going to have to bring up someone who was already a part of this coaching regime, meaning that they're probably part of the problem. But you got to bring them up. And whether he makes the playoffs or wins the Super Bowl, if you knew you were done with him, then let that decision hold serve. And regardless of what happens in the future, be done with him. But anyway, it feels desperate and it feels like you didn't solve anything. You just did something because you felt you had to do something. And maybe that's solving something. Maybe doing this lights a fire under everybody like, oh, shoot, we can get fired out here. We better tighten up. Maybe. So maybe it does do something. I guess we'll know later on. But I don't know, man. Like, I don't necessarily think that a loss to the Minnesota Vikings out in London 23-17 when you had the ball with a chance to win warrants like, oh, that's the last straw. But I mean, I'm not the one who makes the big money. I'm not the one who makes these big decisions. It does feel, like I said, it does feel a little bit desperate. And, nobody wins when they're playing out of desperation.